Hi everyone, this is a presentation on Cheryl Stobie's article titled Gendered Bodies in Chimamanda and Ngozi Adichie's Purple Hibiscus. And I will be talking about the main arguments and the focus of the analysis, and I'll explain the theories used by the author, and then I'll share my reflections with you. First of all, Cheryl Stobie maintains that Purple Hibiscus is a Bildungsroman, a coming-of-age story, and that the coming-of-age of the main character and that of her brother are represented in terms of gendered bodies and psyches. She also argues that the traditional gender binarism is criticized and non-binary alternatives are endorsed in the novel, and she says the symbol of purple hibiscus signifies non-conformity and hybridity. She also has an argument regarding the textual relationship between purple hibiscus and things fall apart. She says Adichie is paying homage to Achebe, but she's also writing back to him, particularly in regards to gender and sexuality. Stobie points out that there are obvious similarities between Okonkwo, Eugene, and Woya and Jaja. And she says Adichie addresses a crucial lack in Achebe's text by building a dynamic, developing female character. And the main focus is on gender representations and the Bildung, the formation of the female protagonist as a dynamic postcolonial female character, and the concept of hybridity and language and power relationship. Theories. Womanism is a term coined by Alice Walker. In a nutshell, we can say it is a social theory rooted in the gender and the racial oppression of women of color. It acknowledges the racism experienced by women of color in the feminist movement. The definitions by Alice Walker and Chimamanda are on the screen. You can stop the video and read them. Stobie notes that Alice Walker, who has acknowledged that she is bisexual, has aroused antipathy among African womanists because she includes same-sex desire in her definition. For example, Chimamanda firmly distances herself from Walker's definition of womanism. Stobie observes, however, that Adichie's womanism has aspects both from Walker and Oganyemi. Postcolonialism is a multidisciplinary approach dealing with the effects of colonialism and imperialism. Professor Paul Fry's lecture gives an elaborate overview of the postcolonial theory, including the concept of hybridity as put forward by Homi Bhabha. And in Purple Hibiscus, we see examples of cultural, gender, linguistic, and religious hybridity. Ellen Sixu is one of the mothers of the post-structuralist feminist theory. She discusses the relationship between language and sexuality. Phallocentrism is the idea that masculinity is the source of power, and logocentrism regards words and language as the fundamental expression of an external reality. Phallogocentrism is then the privileging of the masculine in understanding meaning and social relations, meaning centered around the phallus. So she says phallogocentric discourse defines a woman by what she lacks and silences her. So woman must write herself and create a feminine writing. She also suggests Vedic bisexuality. What she means by it does not refer to sexual orientation or androgyny, but a fluid kind of gender understanding that dismantles the binary, the gender binary. And Marlene Norbius Philip is a poet focusing on the identity of the colonized female and the power of language. Here is a part of a poem by her. The novel, as you remember, starts with Jaja rejecting communion and calling it wafer, so he also rejects its religious significance. Stobie draws our attention to Eugene's tongue during communion, a gendered bodily signifier of power over language in his patriarchal religion. So Eugene is empowered by phallogocentric religious authority and accrues power through the tongue. He uses language to judge and control. For example, when he beats his family, he uses rhetorical questions and the lexicon of the Inquisition: sin, desecration, hell, heathen, thwarting God's will, ungodly, devil, sacrilege. He even uses it to euphemize his brutality as accident, when referring to the mutilation of Jaja's finger, Beatrice's miscarriage as a result of his beating, but his near-fatal beating of Kambili, Stobie exemplifies. When it comes to women, Stobie points out that the female form is constructed as polluted and sinful in terms of phallogocentrism, which hampers, for example, Kambili's access to the power of the word, either written or spoken. Jaja, by virtue of his gender, has access to a language, that it defies that hierarchy. His rejection of communion is symbolic because he rejects hypermasculinity and absolutist religion. Beatrice, in contrast to Eugene, is silent and small. Her finger-sized ceramic figurines represent the monochromatic, Eurocentric model of the perfect body, ballet dancers in various contorted postures, suggesting stylization, ritual, and the discipline undergone by ballet dancers in their training. Stobie observes that Beatrice and Eugene form binary opposites of genders. They are also traditional representations of female submission and male domination. Kambili and Jaja take sips from Eugene's tea, which they call love sips. It burns their tongues, but Kambili says it doesn't matter because it burns Papa's love into her. Stobie points out that Eugene's love comes at a price, and that Kambili's rationalization of the pain involved indicates a Manichaean split of body and mind. By Manichaean, she means a kind of dualism that views the body, the material, as inherently bad and the spirit as inherently good. So he underlines Eugene's pathological body hatred and his intolerance for female bodies' biological functions, such as morning sickness and menstruation pain. And she explains that Kambili also learns body hatred and she internalizes the abuse. Torture is mimetic of death, where there is only body and no voice, she states. So Kambili is a young girl oppressed by silenced by oppression, and English is a father tongue to her, as in Norby's Phillips' poem, because her mother tongue Igbo is silenced, and she struggles in various ways to express herself. She stutters, she has trouble swallowing, she fakes a cough to avoid speaking, she chooses silence, she avoids using active voice in fear of confrontation, and she tries to give answers to please her interlocutor. She doesn't speak audibly, she whispers. Kambili, Jaja, and Mama are silenced, but they develop a form of resistance and solidarity, the language of die, speaking with our spirits, as Kambili calls it. And Stobie highlights Ifeoma's characteristics. Unlike Beatrice, she is a large woman. She is outspoken. She can easily code switch between Igbo and English. She smiles, laughs, and sings. She is not afraid of Eugene. She maintains her integrity and refuses to comply with his demands, prohibitions, and rewards. So she also represents both feminine and masculine characteristics. And this is what Ellen Zixu refers to as Vedic bisexuality. The feminine identity and culture are intertwined in the novel. Culture is what we see the feminine identity through. So this is a womanist element matching with the aspects of womanism as described by Chimamanda Ngozi. And the queered representation of Jaja matches Walker's version. Stobie says, the connection of the hybrid purple blooms with Jaja rather than Kambili functions to queer the text, to render the text queer, and connects Adichie with Walker's version of womanism rather than with its more homophobic counterparts. Stobie doesn't mean that Jaja is coded as gay or bisexual. She means that he has queered elements as an example of masculinity outside the heteropatriarchal models, similar to Ifeoma's Vedic bisexuality. Displacement of binary oppositions is crucial for the development of the protagonist. Ifeoma embodies both feminine and masculine attributes. She functions as an alternative for Beatrice and Eugene. They are binary extremes. Ifeoma is a hybrid. And Papa Nukwa represents pre-colonial traditional religion, which is more forgiving than Eugene's strict Catholicism, but it's still not perfect. It still has sexist elements. So the traditional religion and Catholicism, or father and grandfather, don't form a binary opposition. Papa Nukwa is not idealized as Eugene. Cousin Amaka, she's Kambili's same age cousin. She's similar to her mother, Ifeoma, outspoken and so, and she is an alternative self for Kambili. Father Amadi makes Catholicism relevant by using Igbo language, and he is not strict. He is an alternative to Father Benedict. He encourages Kambili's growth. He represents balanced masculinity, and he fulfills a crucial role in Kambili's formation. And Kambili falls in love with him. He tells him that. Stobie remarks it must be a very difficult thing for a young girl to express her love to Catholic priest, and construes Kambili has gained the ability to express herself, and Father Amadi is not represented as perfect or infallible, but he does not encourage Kambili, and she is mature enough to handle this rejection. Furthermore, Stobie asserts that Eugene's death by Beatrice contributes to Kambili's movement into adulthood. Beatrice was forced into the role of the bad mother, unable to protect her children, even her unborn children. So she starts to poison Eugene's tea after him beating her, causing yet another miscarriage and beating Kambili to the point of death. So she gradually exterminates the model of toxic masculinity, Eugene himself, through the symbol of pain as price for love, the tea. Stobie says it was a parodic version of the Eucharist. Later on, Ifeoma's departure to USA and Father Amadi's transfer outside Nigeria signify Kambili is now an autonomous adult, not needing a role model. After reading the novel and this analysis, I paid closer attention to dichotomies. Kambili's world seems to be characterized by them. Her father has a dichotomous character. He's a saint-like figure in public and but an oppressor at home. And he also views the world in a dichotomous way, us Catholics and the others heathens. Binary thought patterns are imposed on the colonized by the colonizer. Eugene was brought up by Catholic missionaries. And mind-body dualism in Catholicism teaches a child what a good person, according to Catholicism, should be like, the idea of the self. And it teaches to deny and ignore the body because the body is considered sinful, wrong, and always an obstacle in front of the ideal self. And eventually a dichotomy is created between what should be and what is. And Kambili, as a young girl, is under double oppression by Eurocentrism of colonial thought and sexism of patriarchy. And Eugene subjects her to continuous torture. She's rather traumatized, perhaps dissociated. She narrates the story in a very detached manner, as if it was not happening to her. Isolation, silence, passivity, alienation, detachment, dissociation, fragmentation are all survival skills developed as response to trauma. They are natural ways of adapting to an unpredictable, unsafe, threatening environment. And what's happening to Kambili in the micro setting is also happening to Nigeria on a macro level. And just like Kambili, Nigerian women are under a double oppression by Eurocentrism of colonial thought and sexism of patriarchy. And when Kambili visits her aunt, she sees a middle ground. She sees a hybrid way of existing, non-binary way of being, and these examples don't suit themselves to an ideal gender, religious, or national ideal. They shape attributes in a way that suit them. So the proliferation of differences, the inclusion of differences without a hierarchy, nonconformity, the visibility and legitimization of liminality and hybridity are indeed essential for undoing and moving beyond the hierarchical, polarized system of binaries. And when we look at the world, we see marginalized populations are often associated with the body, then the mind with dark skin, then light with emotions, then rationality, and the reversal of roles from this side over this side wouldn't change the restrictive and hierarchical nature of binarism. So it is really crucial to deconstruct binaries and reconceptualize our approaches in favor of multiplicity. And this is highlighted in the novel and in this reading. Let's recap the main points of Stobie's analysis. Cheryl Stobie's article, Gender Bodies in Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie's Purple Hibiscus, maintains that Adichie explores the construction of gender within a rigid patriarchal framework through the coming of age of the protagonist, and represents her and her brother's coming of age in terms of gendered bodies and psyches. Adichie criticizes gender binary extremes, provides hybrid alternatives to these extremes, and endorses non-hegemonic, hybrid, gentle forms of masculinity, which are derided traditionally, and in texts such as Things Fall Apart. And the purple hibiscus symbol signifies hybridity and non-conformity. Yeah, and finally, thank you.